Hello, and welcome to Cabinet Learning Series. In this video, we're going to be going over what's new in Advanced Capture version 5. First thing we're going to be going over are some of the advantages of Advanced Capture. We're going to kind of go over a general overview of what Advanced Capture is for those of you that don't really know what it does already. And then once we kind of go over the basics, we're going to talk about two of the new features in Advanced Capture version 5, those being classification and smart zones. If you're not using Advanced Capture already, then you might be familiar with some of the challenges that are involved in simple scanning. By simple scanning, I just mean any type of scanning involving a desktop scanner or a network scanner, really any type of scanning that doesn't involve a capture software such as Advanced Capture. Some of the problems are its basic capabilities. There are no standardization in file naming. Every time you scan in a document, you have to name it manually. There's no standardization in image location. Every time you scan in a document, you have to manually tell it where you want it to be filed on your system. The documents that you scan in are most likely not going to be searchable. They're not OCR'd. And the whole process is very labor intensive. It's very manual. It takes up a lot of man hours. When using Advanced Capture, some of the advantages you have are the ability to extract data using regular expressions. This means that when your documents are processed, any data that's on the documents can be used to help file the document, help name the document, or be sent to another system that you might be using. You can fully customize the file names and keep them standardized, so that way every document that's filed is named the same way. You can create fully searchable PDFs. Every document that gets sent through Advanced Capture and sent into SAFE is going to become a fully searchable PDF. And also you have the ability to do multi-stream migrations. This means you can send the documents to SAFE once they're processed, as well as you can send them to other systems or send the data from the documents to other systems that you might be using. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and give a quick demo of one of the many ways that Advanced Capture can be used to automate your business. So on my screen here, I have Advanced Capture opened up. I'm going to go to my Capture Import module. This is going to allow me to open up the job that I want and select the documents that I want to process. When I'm bringing in my documents, I've told the system to actually separate the documents every time it sees a new invoice number. That way, no matter how long your invoices are, whether they're 1 page or 4 pages, it's going to keep them combined until it sees a new invoice number. You can see down there at the bottom that it's grabbing the invoice number as they're being captured. Once the documents are all brought into the system and separated correctly, I can move on to the next step, which is indexing. Here it's going to grab any other data that I might want to grab from the document. In this example, I'm just grabbing the invoice number and the invoice date. And there we go. So you can see for every invoice, I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see the invoice a little better. It's grabbed the invoice number and the invoice off of the documents. Even though they're slightly different in how they're set up, I'm able to use regular expressions to grab the data that I need off of all the documents. And again, that's just one of the many ways that Advanced Capture can be used to automate your business. So now that we've gone over a little bit about what Advanced Capture can do, I want to go ahead and move into some of the newer features of Advanced Capture. The first one that I mentioned was classification. And to help understand what classification does and how it works, I want to first talk about a couple features that are used to build upon to make classification work. The first one being record types. Record types allow you to make unique index fields, make specific zone profiles, and use certain regular expressions for different types of documents. It allows you to process multiple types of documents through one job and have unique properties for each type of document. For an example, you could use purchase orders and invoices. We would have a record type for each form, and for each form, again, we could use customized zone templates, expressions, and we could have shared and unique index fields for each type of document. Alright, so now I want to give you a quick example of how record types are used in Advanced Capture. I have Capture opened up back on my screen. I'm going to go to my Capture Import step. Here's where I can bring in my documents. The documents that I'm bringing in are actually 3 different types of documents. I have purchase orders, invoices, and delivery receipts. Once they're done separating, I'm going to go ahead and move on to my indexing step, and that's going to allow me to actually grab the data off of the documents. So once the documents are actually ready to be indexed, I can go to the first document here, take a look at what kind of document it is. So this is an invoice. So I want to make sure my record type matches the document type I have to the right. Then I can go to my index field and start grabbing the data. So the first one here is the vendor. I'm going to grab the vendor name. I'm going to grab the invoice date and the invoice number. And it's going to automatically move me to my next document. And there I can change my record type. So this is a purchase order, so I want to change my record type to purchase order. So now you can see that the index information is actually changed to match the information that I want to pull off of a purchase order. So again, I want to grab my vendor, I'm going to grab the date, and in this I'm going to grab the PO number. Same thing with delivery receipt. I want to change my record type down here to delivery receipts. And again, the indexes have changed. So now I can grab the vendor, the date, and the delivery number. So you can see I can have different indexes set up for different types of documents and go through and grab any information that I need off of each of the documents. The next feature that classification builds off of is called zone profiles. This allows the application to have different zone profiles for different types of documents. And I can activate these zone profiles based on different record types. So every time there's a different record type, it can activate a different zone profile. I can have zone profiles activated on different page orientations or a custom written script. So now, before we really get into a demo of how zone profiles work, I want to show you a little bit about how they're set up. So I'm going to go down here to my configuration. I'm going to go into my zone profiles job, and I'm going to skip over to my indexing step. So here I have the indexes that I want to grab. I just have a BOL number. These are bill of lading documents. And if I go over here to my zone tab, I can actually go into where I define the zone profiles. So if I do my drop down right here, I have two zone profiles set up. One for portrait documents and one for landscape documents. If I pick on portrait here, it's going to show me my zone profile for portrait documents. I have it activating on page orientation so that every time it sees a portrait document, it knows to run this zone profile. And the reason we'd want to set these up differently is because, as you can see here, for a portrait document, the BOL number is up here in the far top right. Now if I go to my landscape zone profile, you can see that the bill of lading number is down here, much further away from where it was in the portrait image. So obviously it would be much harder to capture that number with just one zone profile. So this allows me to create multiple for different orientations of the document. So once I create those zone profiles, I'm going to save out of here and go to my capture import step. I'm going to pick my zone profiles lab, grab my documents, and again bring them in and have them separate every time it sees a new bill of lading number. I have two portrait style documents and two landscape documents. Once I have them captured, I'm going to continue on to the indexing step, which is going to run automatically. I have a regular expression being used to know where and what information to grab. So once it's done with the indexing, you can see that I've been able to grab the BOL number off of these documents, whether or not they are portrait or landscape. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to classification. The classification engine is used to identify the first page of documents. It combines the features that we have already discussed. So what it does is it looks at all the documents that you're processing, and once it identifies what kind of documents you're processing, it automatically applies a record type to each of those documents and then runs a zone profile for each of those record types. For example, in accounts payable, it can help with the separation of variable length invoices. It can help with the separation of different types of documents. So you could run purchase orders, invoices, and checks through one job, and classification will separate them out and grab the correct data off of each and one of them automatically. To kind of show you the hierarchy here of how it works, we have our AP docs as the main part of this classification. So as the documents are processed, the classification engine is going to run and separate the documents into these three different record types. Once it determines what type of documents they are, it's going to apply that record type to the document. Once the record type is applied to the document, then the system knows what zone profile to run. Because if you remember, zone profiles can be activated based on record types. So if the system sees that this document is an invoice, it's going to run the invoice profile. So with classification, I want to actually again go into the configuration and show you a little bit about how it's set up before I go into the demo. So I'm going to go here to my configuration. I'm going to go to my classification job. And the first step I want to show you is here at step 3. This is where I enable the different record types. So if I come here to configure, it's going to allow me to enter the different types of records or different types of documents that I'm processing. So in this job, I'm going to be processing purchase orders, invoices, and checks. So once I've added each kind of document that I want to process, I'm going to go ahead and move on to my index fields. So off of these documents, I want to grab the following information: vendor, date, total, invoice number, and purchase order number. So once I've determined what invoices I want to grab, I can come here to the zone tab again and define my different zone profiles. And if I come to my drop down here, you can see I have 3 different zone profiles set up. And when I select one, such as purchase orders, you can see that it's going to run this zone profile when it sees that a document has a record type for purchase orders. So once I've determined my record type, I can actually bring in my template image and draw my zones around where I know the information is going to be that I want to grab. So for purchase order, I know the date's going to be here, I know the purchase order number is going to be here, the vendor name and total, and so on. And I want to do that for each different record type I have. So if I go to invoices here, you can see I have my different template image for my invoices. I can draw a zone for my vendor, my invoice number, date, and so on. And I want to do that for each record type. Once I have my zone profiles built, I can save these and move on to my classification step. My classification step here, once I open this up, it's going to allow me to build different classification forms. And I'm going to build a different form for each record type. So the first one here being purchase orders. I'm going to open this up, and I want to name my form with the type of record that I'm running. I'm going to tell it what record type to use, and then I'm going to come down and apply a classification rule. And what a classification rule does is it lets me tell the system what words to use to figure out what type of document I'm processing. So in this example, when it sees a document that comes through and has the words purchase and order on the document, then it's going to know that's a purchase order. And from there, it can actually take the document and apply that purchase order record type to the document. Once it applies that record type to the document, then it knows which zone profile to run, and that assures I get the correct data off the document. So once I have all that figured out here, I can save it, and then I want to create one for each different record type that I have. I want to make sure that each record type I can find a unique word on each type of document that I can key off of. So that way we know which document to apply which record type to. Once I have my classification form set and built out, I want to go ahead and save my classification step and add the rest of my steps from my workflow and hit finish, save my job type, and now I can move on and actually run the job. So I'm going to come back here to my capture import step. I'm going to pick my classification job and grab the documents that I want to process. You can see here that I have checks, invoices, and purchase orders for 4 different vendors. So I'm going to go ahead and bring these in, and it's going to separate the documents every time it sees a new document type. So it's going to separate it when it sees a new check, an invoice, or a purchase order. And then once it's done bringing them in, I can go ahead and move on to the classification step. So I brought in my documents. I'm going to come here and click done and move on to my classification step. So what this is going to do, as soon as I click OK, it's going to look at all of these documents, and it's actually going to OCR the documents and figure out what type of document it is based on the classification rules that I set up. So right here it's OCRing the documents. It's classifying them, and now it's automatically moving on to the index step. And it's going to automatically run the indexing because I have the zone profile set up for each record type that it's already classified. Once it's done processing them through indexing, I can get to my quality assurance step. So here you can see it's determined which type of document I'm processing. It's grabbed the vendor, date, total, the invoice number off the invoices, and the purchase order number off of every document. So what it does again, is just allows me to process different types of documents through one job and grab whatever information I need to off of those documents. So now that we've gone over what classification is and what it does, I want to go ahead and move on to the next feature in advanced capture, which are smart zones. Smart zones provide several capabilities. They allow each zone to have its own anchor, and on each anchor it allows us to have multiple child zones, and they can be checked in sequence to make sure we get the correct information. For example, if we're keying off the word invoice number, that's going to be our anchor, we can build child zones to the right and to the bottom of invoice number. So what it's going to do is it's going to go encompassing, or directional intelligence, to sort of go in a clockwise direction through the child zones until it finds the correct data. So we're going to look to the right first of invoice number, and if it doesn't find any information there or the correct information there, it's going to move down below it to our next child zone until it finds the correct data that we want to pull. Once it does that, it's going to grab the data and then it's going to move on to the next document. The reason that this is important, if I'm going to go ahead and bring up an invoice here. So you can see that this invoice has the invoice number below it. And the way the OCR engine works is it's actually going to read top to bottom and left to right. So you can see that if it does that, it reads invoice number and it's going to read this information over here before it ever gets back to invoice number. So that would take a very complicated and almost impossible regular expression to write for it to work. So this allows us to anchor off this word invoice number and then specifically search just around that anchor. So now I want to go ahead and show you how smart zones are configured or set up. I'm going to go here to my configuration. I'm going to go to my smart zones job, and I'm going to go ahead and go to my indexes. On these documents here, I'm just pulling off the invoice number. Again, I want to go to my zone tab and define my zone so I can build my smart zone. I have my smart zone right here. I've built the zone in the upper right hand corner because I know that every invoice that's going to be processed is going to have the invoice number somewhere within this box. Once I determine where the invoice number is going to be and draw my box, it's going to open up my smart zone configuration window. From here, I'm going to write my anchor expression. What this does is it makes sure that it finds invoice number, the anchor, no matter how it's written, whether it's invoice number, invoice and the number sign, inv.no, really any combination that an invoice can show up, so that we make sure we find our anchor on each type of invoice. Once I write my expression, I'm going to go ahead and hit locate, and it's going to tell me where it's found my anchor. I'm going to click OK, and if I zoom in over here, I can actually see where it's found my anchor. It's going to be in a green box right here. Once I've found my anchor, then I can continue to build my child zones, and that's what I'm going to build right here. I'm going to build as many child zones as I want. Here I built one to the right and to the bottom. I've told it how tall and wide I want each zone to be. So that way, once it finds the anchor on each type of document, it's going to search both of these zones. Once I build my child zones, I'm going to save my smart zone. I'm going to save my zone profile. And the last thing I'm going to do is come here to the Advanced tab. This is where I'm going to write one more regular expression to make sure that in the child zones, it's grabbing the correct information. So once it finds that anchor, with this regular expression, I'm making sure that it only grabs a number with 5 to 7 digits. That way, if there happens to be a word besides invoice number or below invoice number, it doesn't grab that. It's only going to grab a number. So now that I've configured my smart zone, I can go ahead and run the job. I'm going to go here to my capture import step again, pick my smart zones job, and import these documents. It's going to separate every time it sees a new invoice number. So I have 3 invoices here, and I'm going to bring them through my indexing step, and it's going to use that smart zone to find the anchor, find where it says invoice on the document, run through those child zones, and make sure it grabs the invoice off of the document. So you can see that on each document, no matter where the word invoice number is located, around the word invoice number, it's made sure to grab the correct information. And that concludes our learning series on advanced capture. Again, we've gone over some of the advantages of advanced capture, why you might want to use it, and we've gone over the 2 main features, classification and smart zones. If you have any questions or want more information about advanced capture, feel free to visit us at cabinetpaperless.com, email us at info@cabinetpaperless.com, or give us a call at 800-621-6501. And again, I want to thank you for watching the video, and I hope you have a great day.